Welcome back to PPCM's Painful Truth. Today's guest, Mike Pickering.
Hello.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing well.
Good. Thank you so much. Talking with me today and giving me your time. As we know, time is precious. I actually reached out to you because I wanted to know about the peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM awareness in your family and how, this disease has, affected, your family. Your wife was how old when she was diagnosed with peripartum cardiomyopathy?
So she was actually diagnosed at the very end of her life with it. So we actually didn't get to spend much time at home with the disease, dealing with the situations that it causes and the lacks, the inability to function and also work around the house. She was diagnosed in the hospital and she actually didn't even get to leave the hospital.
So during her pregnancy, was this her first pregnancy?
Actually, it was her fourth.
It was her fourth pregnancy.
Yes.
Was compared to the three pregnancies, were they all different? Were they the same? Did
they were
have
pretty
similar
consistent.
symptoms?
The last two kids, the last 3 weeks of her pregnancy, she actually had labor contractions. Actually, it wasn't Braxton Hicks. They actually listed as she was in labor. There was just no moving forward. So the last 3 weeks of both of her last two pregnancies, she had continual labor pretty much for 3 weeks off and on.
So did her symptoms during pregnancy, compared to, like the fourth one compared to, let's say, the third, was there more excessive swelling? Was it more visible to show the symptoms? Because she obviously wasn't diagnosed the first, second, or third pregnancy either, which she could have possibly maybe had as well.
Possibly, but all her symptoms came up after the pregnancy. None of it came up during the pregnancy at all. The swelling started happening. She couldn't lay down while she was sleeping. She had to be prop herself up. She had a hard time even walking around the house without losing her breath. I mean, hindsight's 2020. You see that now and you're like, oh my gosh, you should really get that checked. But at the time, we weren't really sure what it was. I mean, we live in Utah where the inversion is terrible. So we just assumed it was just terrible air quality, just given her asthma or, affecting her breathing.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the mountains of Utah. It's like my second home. So I do know that the higher altitude, that can cause like confusion of this disease, which is why early diagnosis is, of that blood test, the simple blood test, is so important because like your wife didn't show any signs of this disease or symptoms during pregnancy, whereas peripartum cardiomyopathy definitely peaks after delivery. Whether more I noticed with C-sections, because with fluid comes infection. Did she have the baby, the PPCM baby, vaginally or C-section?
It was vaginal.
And so that was probably really hard pushing, and her heart for probably, hours.
Actually, she always had quick deliveries. She was done giving birth in probably about 4 pushes, about 45 minutes. So,
really?
Actual pushing, yeah.
So after she delivered was when it peaked.
6 weeks actually is after her birth, after the baby was born is when they found out that she had PPCM. Like the symptoms are starting to build through those 6 weeks. She went to her 6 weeks post checkup. They gave her a clean bill of health, which was a failure on them because they obviously missed something when they checked her blood pressure and her heart rate. And 2 weeks later, she's dead. because
Yeah.
of, like, she went to the hospital, like she went to the Instacare because she just couldn't breathe. It was getting worse. And so she's like, I need to get this checked out, because she's like, oh, it's nothing, but I want to get it checked out. I'm like, get it checked out. And they did her blood pressure, and it was through the floor. Her resting heart rate at an hour was 130. So her
Wow.
heart was pushing as hard as it could just to keep pumping.
Yeah.
And that's when they took her to the hospital.
Did they say that her heart, that the fluid suffocated her heart, or that her heart was enlarged or weakened? Like,
It was
how?
weakened and enlarged. Initially, they thought she was septic. Then they thought she had pneumonia because of all the fluid in her lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And probably by day 2 or 3, they finally said it's a heart condition called pericardial cardiomyopathy.
Got it.
So,
Well, I am just, I'm so sorry. I mean, I built this platform. Actually, what was her full name?
it was Margaret Mary Pickering. I always just
Margaret
called her Maggie.
Mary Pickering. Maggie.
Yeah.
Today her voice is definitely, surrounding, I feel like like a megaphone, and she's, definitely screaming from the rooftops along with the other PPCM women. And her life and her passing has meaning, especially to a pregnancy movement,
Absolutely.
to all the, to all the people that are spreading awareness, the other nonprofits, with Deanna and Save the Mommies, or
Mm-hmm.
Brianna and like Let's Talk PPCM. I mean, all of us are, trying to create real change, so this catastrophe never happens to another woman, especially since it's preventable, and to another family. And, my heart goes out, to you and to, your boys and her boys. And do you have any daughters with?
I have 2 daughters and I have 3 sons and 2 daughters now. So I got remarried about 2.5 years ago. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful. Yes,
So,
I noticed that she's lovely, and she seems like a sweetheart and just like an angel to, um, just have compassion about, this disease, and to like love, her children the way that, she would love them.
yeah.
I feel that if or do you feel that if the BNP test was provided to her as if it was mandatory and standard in the blood panel, that she would still be here today?
Oh, absolutely. They would have caught that early in the 3rd trimester, and she would have been just fine.
Yes.
They'd have been able to treat it, as opposed to catching at the tail end when her heart efficiency was at 5%. I mean, if you catch, the earlier it is, the better chance of survival. 100%.
Early diagnosis. Yeah. Early
And so,
diagnosis saves lives.
yeah, exactly. So when my wife got pregnant with our 5th child, we actually started looking for doctors, any doctor that even knew what PPCM was. That
How
was
did
like
that
one of our
go?
first caveats. Like, do you even know what this is?
Right.
And yes or no. Okay, well, there we go.
How did that go? Was it a challenge trying to find a doctor that had any awareness?
Not really. We kind of got lucky. We found
Okay,
one up
good.
in Layton. So we refused to go to the same hospital that my wife died in for the pregnancy. Just
Obviously, yeah.
there was several other stipulations along with the pregnancy that also pushed the matter. I mean, I don't know if you're too aware with malpractice lawsuits going on in Utah, or what happened about 5-6 years ago with one of the doctors out here. He was under investigation when my wife was his patient, and we didn't know about it till later. So he's in prison right now for other things. But yeah. So it was just kind of a combination of that, and also the fact that they refused to send her to an actual cardiology hospital when we told them that they needed to send her to one. So
Yeah, that's definitely a malpractice.
we actually pursued that to see if there was anything to bring more light to PPCM or anything like that. And at the time, the things that they did at the hospital, they did by the book and they did it right, but still it was one of those things like, did you really need to keep her here when you guys aren't qualified as much as, the downtown or somewhere else?
Yeah, it's almost as if like it doesn't even matter where you go. It's the individual that has the proper training and education to know what to do.
Oh,
And it's like
absolutely.
it's they always say, "Oh, that's the best hospital," or, well, doctors rent out the spaces
Yeah.
of the location. It's like a mall. So when you say
Yeah.
the best hospital, that's like, what are you saying? I mean, they say I had the best hospital in Beverly Hills, Cedar Sinai, all the famous people go there and everything. And,
Mhm.
I went to over, 20 doctors, over 40, appointments. And I even went to the ER with an infection. And 7 days later, I had 3 cardiac deaths, and I was in a hyperthermia coma. And thank God I wasn't at Cedar Sinai at the best. I was at a very small medical center in Arizona,
Huh.
and they had awareness, and they saved my life.
That's
And
crazy.
they didn't have the great fish and like the red, they didn't have all of that, but they had awareness. And so I was brought back from cardiac death is what, which is
Yeah.
impossible, but my husband, he gave me CPR, and he stored enough oxygen in my brain, which is why I'm not brain dead. But, nobody or any hospital is the best, especially with lack of awareness. And even like doctors that care, it's like, okay, great. I'm so glad that you care. But once a woman is diagnosed with PPCM, you got to do the mandatory, or what should be mandatory, testings.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's where our American dream is here for our American women, because there is, and if you watch videos of this and the docu-series from this, you will notice that American women have a higher death rate more than any country, because gynecology is not provided the diagnosis that even Dr. James Fett says. This is a lab study that is proven that women will not need to suffer and die during a pregnancy-induced complication if this is provided. And those are not provided in America, although it is provided in Canada and it is provided in the UK. And so when I have conversations about, to other families, and I'm putting the pieces together, I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to pay for healthcare. You don't have to pay for health insurance. You're not in debt with health bills, because everything's free to you, and you get the diagnosis during pregnancy. What are we doing wrong? Where we're paying like $500 to $700 a month in insurance. We are, most women and families are in debt from having this diagnosis, which is, clearly over $200,000, even more. And, it takes like sometimes, a decade to get out of debt just from the delivery. And so, but in other countries, they don't have that issue. It's here in America where we don't have the diagnosis in gynecology. We don't have the treatment. We don't have the education. We don't have the training, and women are still dying like it's the 1400s. And so, I get so passionate about your situation, because it's almost as if like my heart goes out to, your boys and how they must like, they must feel, about this. Like, who can they be angry about too? And it would be the doctors. It would be the person that treated your wife that, just didn't have the education and the of the blood test of the BNP, because we have to rely on cardiology. Gynecology has to rely on cardiology for the standard testing that should be standard in gynecology. I mean, it's just, there's no rhyme or reason. It's almost like they want you to take loopholes when something's so simple. So how old are your boys today?
Let's see. My kids are 11, 9, 7, and 5. And the youngest is 7.5 months.
Oh, and she had your Maggie, she had 4 with you?
Yep. 4.
And how are the 4, do they remember Maggie? Do they ask about her? Do they ask about heaven?
Yeah, we're deeply religious family. We're non-denominational Christians. I live in Utah. No, I'm not Mormon. But we definitely talk about heaven and where she is. And we have pictures around the house with Maggie, and we don't shut down the conversation. We openly will talk about anything that they have on their little minds that they want to understand or try to understand better.
Yeah.
So ironically, my second wife, she is a child therapist, so she actually can see things. And the kids have gone through a little bit of therapy, not through my wife, obviously, but we've taken them to therapy, and we've had them have those conversations with people that they can have and understand and try to decompress or understand the situations more.
No, that's lovely. I'm very much an advocate to mental health and to therapy, and especially, when there is endless grieving and questions, and just trying to, as a child, growing up, you every child is different with their parent, and
Oh, absolutely.
and each one is going to, it might hit them when they're 16, or one when,
Exactly.
you just never know. And it's wonderful that, as we know, awareness, early diagnosis, just being present in the moment with understanding when that, child, let's say now he's a young man, has a different perception about it, and how he can internalize that. And I feel like when you do, even with like, child, like your wife, she's a child behavioral therapist, it takes conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
mean, most definitely. And I think that, being in, as much as you can, being in like that type of environment where you have that support of expression and knowing that it's okay, to feel, I would feel that it would be just such a, a bond of just like with you and your boys, of just like, knowing that, she's really like the veil is thinner than we believe, and she's always with you. Like I always tell my son, I get signs all the time from my mom and my dad. My mom passed away 4 months after my heart surgery from PPCM. She had walking pneumonia. She's just watching me, her daughter, like her, like everything, like, it was hard for her. So PPCM affects the whole family. For me,
Oh, absolutely.
I lost my dad 18 months later. He's in love with my mom since he was like 13. So, you know, basically they had a love story, and their whole life they've been in love. And then they had a daughter that got PPCM, and then they died tragically because one after the other, you know, I mean, it was just
Hmm.
sad. So it does
Yeah.
affect the whole family.
Oh,
And I feel,
absolutely.
and in many ways it affects, you know, it's an endless grief. So I think that with you having, you know, your church and having such an open relationship and talking about that is such a blessing and a miracle within like your family. And hopefully like that, you know, always, you know, continues as the years grow and the boys get, you know, older. What would you feel like that could maybe have been other than different? I mean, other than the doctors having any awareness and the test being mandatory, what do you think that Maggie would, we are her voice right now.
Hmm.
Is there something that she always said, or is there something that she would want others to know with what happened? Like what would her words be to say to a woman who is pregnant and possibly may have this and not know, or a woman who does know and feels like she's off? What would you think that Maggie would, if she was here today, would want to say to another woman?
Honestly, being devout Christians, I mean, she would probably take her right to the Bible and pray with her and tell her that, you know, God is in control. God will be with you. I mean, obviously, she'd be there right there with her, helping her through that whole situation, praying with her, befriending her, just helping her any way she could to make sure that she's supported in the way she needs to be.
Well, yeah, that's beautiful. I'm very connected with the soul spirit and the soul being. I feel like when you do pass on, it's not really you die. We never die because energy never dies. Energy's been around for like over 500 billion years. Like planets have like burst and new planets formed, and the one thing that's been consistent is energy. And you know, we can feel something or like hear a song, or you know, not talk, and then like it over and over, or you know, or you hear it in your head and somebody sings it, or you know, you think of a friend and next thing you know they Facebook you, or you know what I'm saying, that
Yeah.
energy, that connection, that's energy. And I call it the new chapter of life on the other side, because the veil is so thin. Sometimes I don't know how my mom does it, but she definitely shows off. I mean, and it's very, very specific. And I don't know, you know, when I, you know, I had my times of death for over 30 minutes, each cardiac arrest, and I know I wasn't dreaming. And I felt like there was you know, I felt like I was like on a healing dimension, you know.
Hmm.
And my son asked me the other day, you know, what does heaven look like? And he asks me all the time because he says, you know, he talks a lot about, you know, heaven.
Hmm.
And and it's interesting because the way I described it, then I looked it up on the looked it up, and it was like exactly. So he's like, "Oh my gosh, you really were there," because I described it, and it was like it's like amazing that, you know, that when you do pass, that and you're in your soul spirit and your soul being, and it merges, and I feel like there is there is always a connection. And I believe that Maggie, with my, I'm not just saying this, like I get all the signs. I feel like I still have a part of either my soul being or my soul spirit that merged is still kind of there, because I feel like sometimes I'm walking and like, God's like moving my feet, because I end up in these places or in the situation where, it's really like it is what it is. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I feel like, us connecting today, our energies are connecting, and she's, right here saying, all the things that you're feeling of,
Mhm.
with blessings, and being, if she, her heart is caring, and, and gives prayers, she's exactly doing that to us right now on this disease. And wants definitely this disease to have awareness. And I thank you for that, because this is global,
No,
but the
absolutely.
United States of America has one of the highest death rates. And so I specifically am targeting on women that are in the United States, and hopefully that our, American dream is to get this NT-Pro BNP test, as well as all the other screening labs and testings that should already be standard and mandatory as early as like 10 weeks pregnant. So, you know, another woman doesn't have to, have her voice being heard through her husband and through another PPCM survivor, myself. And I could have easily, you know, stayed on the other side. I'm no different than Maggie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I woke up. And I don't. I mean, I was in a coma for weeks, and I was frozen like a popsicle, and I was pronounced dead. So obviously I'm meant to, have these hard conversations that we don't want to have, but it's really the the painful truth of
Yeah,
our reality.
absolutely.
And is there any, I mean, as a man's point of view, because I'm a woman, obviously, um and even my husband, and other men who have watched, suffered, and lost, what would you want to say to a man who's watching this today, who has experienced, or maybe could experience, or is young man that's starting a family? What would you say to him that's watching?
I'd say hug your kids more, be with them, love on them. All that love you had for your wife, you can definitely pour that into your kids. Make sure your kids know that you're there for them regardless. Like for me, my two youngest kids through Maggie are always going to be really closely attached to her, no matter what, because my youngest son was born 2 months before she died. He's going to obviously later in life, we're going to have that conversation of, no, it's not your fault. And then my daughter, her youngest daughter, she actually died on her birthday. So she's going to automatically always be tied to my wife's death. And so those are conversations that
What day was that?
you're always going to have a special part for them in that concept, in that way that you have to just love on them extra. My oldest son, he was the oldest. He was 6 when she died. So, he's probably going to have the most memories of her. But then also later in life, he's going to start asking those questions. Why did this have to happen?
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't share. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's 11 now. So he's already gone half his life without his birth mom. But he doesn't talk about it as much as my oldest daughter. So there's different things you have to do with different kids.
Absolutely.
And you have to love on them the way they need to be loved on. And it's just, for me, I poured into my Bible day after day. I read the book of Psalms. I read the book of Psalms like 3 times that year. And I hate that book of the Bible. It's touchy-feely. It's not practical. It's, emotional. And so it was kind of interesting that I read so much of that book that year. But my oldest daughter, she is one that wears her heart on her sleeve. She goes, "Hey, Dad, I miss Mom." Okay, let's sit and talk about it. What do you miss about her? What do you remember about her? Let's talk about those things.
And how old is she now?
She's 9 now.
Okay.
So she was 4 when her mom died.
Yeah.
So but there's always hope, and there's always other people, and definitely don't give up, because there's kids that need you.
Yeah. I mean, that there's levels of that I can't even, touch upon as a young, woman. It's at 9 years old, a young girl, that's going to be a lady and missing her mom. And, this is definitely a fight for even your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that now she's probably going to worry about too. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
why every year she must have the BNP test. She must know her BNP number, because, they always say that, when a woman is carrying her daughter inside of her, she's also carrying her grandchild.
I've heard that.
And, with a boy, it's different. With the boys, they share the same brain cells as the mother. It's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting if you were to go and to see the difference between how a bond with a boy inside the womb as to a girl, and as your wife held your daughter and your future grandchild, whether your daughter has a boy or a girl, this disease is educational, and we are all studies now.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, even though women have been giving birth since the beginning of time, and this really should be an ancient conversation and never have happened, but we're having it for the first time, it still continues with, with the children and the children's children. That's why this movement goes beyond just the mother. It
Mm-hmm.
goes even to the grandchild, because there's that genetic, the genetic blood tests to know, okay, your grandmother or my mother, passed from peripartum cardiomyopathy. So it's our, not to be, just to have awareness, not that there's going to be a problem, but just to have the awareness that if it is genetic, it can be easily prevented.
Yeah.
But if it's unaware, then yeah. So I even have, Liam's a boy, but I still have his BNP test and his EKG on my refrigerator. I was talking to him about it last night, and I said, every year you must, and I'm preparing him, and he doesn't want to get a shot. It's not a shot. It's just taking your blood. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
you're not, I said, we're not, it's just taking your blood, because we have to know. So I always feel like awareness on this. If I don't have it with him, then that would be careless of me. I don't know what he's functioning on,
Mm-hmm.
and he was inside me when I was having this problem. So I was wondering, your PPCM baby is now, you said 6?
He's 5.
5?
Mm.
Oh, he's the age of Liam. He's the age of my baby.
Yeah. November 4th, 2016.
That's when that's when
That's when he was born.
that's when he was born.
Yeah.
Wow. I coded November 24th,
Okay.
2016.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so the same year.
Yeah. Within weeks.
My husband and you
Yeah.
were on the same emotions, probably.
Yep.
That would
Definitely
be
in that time frame.
that would be interesting if you actually had an interview with my husband. I think it would go completely different because the men obviously have a different I don't know, probably have a different conversation. That would be probably interesting if you ever wanted to have a conversation with him and do an interview with him.
I'd be fine with that.
It was such a pleasure.
Ditto.
And
Nice to meet you.
I thank you so much. No, it's fine.
Let's do it at a different date, but not right now.
Oh, okay. He's trying to manage too much. He's asking if you can do it on a different day.
Yeah, that should be fine. Honestly, I don't even have next month's schedule yet, so I don't know when I could. But I'll reach out when I can figure out a time that might work.
He wants to give you his time, and I'm scheduled for another interview. So he's like, I want to talk, but I can't because I have like about 5 interviews today, but and I get caught up. But yeah, we can set up a different day because he's gonna want to actually. He just said he would love to talk to you actually. So
okay.
That should have maybe been the way it should have been. But again, on behalf of like Maggie and your family and your new wife, I will pray for all of you every day for good health and strength and prosperity and all the things that your heart's desire moving forward from this disease. And thank you for speaking on behalf of her today, because
That was my pleasure. Thank you for letting me share this. I'll be praying for you guys as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I will set up an interview hopefully like next week or something for you and my husband.
That should be able to work. I don't have next week's schedule yet, so they always give us our schedule at the end of the middle of the month, but compliments of COVID, we have no idea when we're working.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. It's been, we rerouted our life too. We don't go on set anymore. We both were working in the industry for movies and television. And I've turned down a few TV shows and decided to do my own show. So
there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, building the platform for all our PPCM survivors and families, and to possibly hope to get this awareness out there and create change. Maybe not the world, but start at least in the United States of America.
Absolutely.
So, yes. So thank you. And we will keep in touch.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you. Many blessings. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the PPCM Fund podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. PPCM's Painful Truth is made possible through the generous support of donors like you. Help us spread the awareness by donating at ppcmfund.com or click the link below to become a member through Ko-fi. Have a great day.